Hello there and welcome, viewer. This is a little different than my other guides, a little more freeform. I'm here today to talk to you about role-playing and storytelling. Who am I to talk to anybody about either one of those things? Well, I did write a couple novels before this, and part of a third one, and am a long-time writer and game master. I had a long-running blog that I wrote a lot, and then there's this channel. And I do want to talk about it extensively. Mainly in the intended way to experience the channel. Maybe at the same time you can glean something about how to form and shape your own stories and role-playing experiences in this wonderful world of video games. The most basic thing I can tell you about the channel's story is if you want the most complete experience, go to the Skyrim Cinematic Story playlist and watch it from the beginning. It is the major thing going on here, though you might be here from guides or modding videos. That's okay. Anybody's welcome, really. And because this channel is so Skyrim focused, I'm going to talk a lot about the Elder Scrolls series. Because if you do want to write your own story in the Elder Scrolls series, there are a lot of things that you probably need to know. If you're still here, that means you're not just content on playing through the games, and you want to think about role-playing and characterization. My first piece of advice is, before you do anything in the game, ask, would my character do this? For that, you have to have a sense of where your character came from, what their motivations are. Luckily, the protagonist is a blank slate in the Elder Scrolls, and in fact there are a lot of things in the Elder Scrolls that are left vague intentionally for the sake of the player's own experience filling in the blanks. The main character of each game is a nameless, formless, backgroundless mass, usually a foreigner so nobody will recognize you, that you decide how they will interact with and react to the world. One big exception to this, and it's really just early installment weirdness, is the Elder Scrolls 1 Arena. The character, the Eternal Champion, actually has a canon name. Really, that was just early on, and they took to call him the Eternal Champion. Can be whatever character you want him to be. The Elder Scrolls has its own canon, obviously, as to what the world is, though some of that is intentionally vague, also to let the players define things for themselves, not just in their own characters, but most things are told from a human, unreliable narrator perspective. So any information you have about the Elder Scrolls might not actually be accurate. This also allows you to define what you believe the world, the gods, the history of the universe to be, to some extent. And this is a whole huge can of worms. If you're interested, Google the creation of Nirn, the Godhead, the Tribunal, the Sermons of Vivek, or any of the big lore dumps. Kim, spelled C-H-I-M, is a big one. And anything from Michael Kirkbride is somewhat insane, very interesting, and of dubious canonicity. He was one of the big writers for the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, which is probably the weirdest in the series, and a lot of people's favorite. But anyway, in my story, I've had to make a number of specific choices, which I colloquially call Destanaverse canon. You also might decide that all of your characters from your playthroughs of the Elder Scrolls games are actually in the same universe, which is what I've done. And as such, I've decided that for the past 4 years now, there's been an ongoing story with Skyrim mainly. And anytime I play a new character, it fits neatly into that world because there's so many quests and so many quest mods you could be playing for years. Obviously, at the very least, I had to define who the Dragonborn is. You too can define your own Dragonborn, and then when you're ready to start a new playthrough, use one of the many non-Dragonborn add-ons, mods that allow you to play as not the Dragonborn and just play as other people. I like the idea that my main character is not the only thing going on in the entire province of Skyrim, and not the person who does everything. And in general, in storytelling, this enhances verisimilitude. In a set of novels, for example, if your main characters are away from their home country for years at a time, the same people are probably not going to be doing the same things when they get back. I mean, there are exceptions. Imagine going back to your hometown and seeing that some of the same people are in the same jobs. But the world does change. For example, the end of The Lord of the Rings. The hobbits go back to the Shire and find that it is being attacked by orcs. They also figure out that they've grown a little bit and are able to fight them off. I feel like it's reasonable storytelling, good storytelling, to have things going on elsewhere that your character is not involved with. It makes a world feel really lived in and real. So while I do have one defined Dragonborn, her name is Destana, For Skyrim, I used the Proteus mod to be able to play several different characters. Many different characters, in fact. I even have some Ascendant NPCs. Playing many characters broadens the depth with which I can define the characters' personalities and give them relationships to each other. I get to make more characters, which is a love of mine, and you guys get to see me have them interact. This goes beyond even the really well-made follower mods, stuff like Inigo, though I do use those too. One reason I chose to do this, well, first because the amazing Proteus mod exists, and because I can. I would absolutely do this in any other game if I could. In fact, for example, there is a Baldur's Gate 3 mod which you can create custom companions. And in the vanilla game, it's just you can hire hirelings that are randomly generated. I don't know why they didn't include this in the full game, and having the ability to customize the character's appearance is great. What I did at the end of Act 1 was create one of my other characters in my main character's game. Of course, this cuts down on the interactions between the named characters, because, my guy doesn't have a personality of his own. Anyway, back to Skyrim. One of the biggest reasons I have multiple characters in Skyrim is in base Skyrim you can join any faction. In fact, you can join every faction at the same time without any conflict. Hello, Guildmaster of the Thieves Guild. You're also the Harbinger. You're also the Commander of the Stormcloaks. You're also the Archmage without having known how to cast spells, technically. You're also the Dragonborn. Anyway, you get where I'm going with this. One big thing that I think the older Bethesda games really had and have lost is real consequences to your choices. That is one place where Baldur's Gate 3 shines, because the characters will remember what you said hours ago. But anyway, this is a tangent. In Morrowind, The Elder Scrolls 3, you couldn't join the Thieves Guild and the Fighters Guild at the same time unless you use special trickery, which I totally did when I played. But you definitely couldn't join more than one house, because they were diametrically opposed to each other. Technically, there is one quest line that you can't join both in Skyrim, which is the Stormcloaks versus the Imperials in the Civil War. But largely, 90% of that quest line is the same on either side. So in summary, somewhere down the line I decided one benefit to having multiple characters would be not a single character being the leader of every single thing in Nirn. And like I said earlier, I like the thought that not a single adventurer is going around doing everything in the world. But also, Proteus and multiple save files does also allow for really cool, normally impossible things to happen. With the Legion and the Stormcloaks, people who follow my channel know that I played both sides with two different characters. Naturally, Destana was a Stormcloak, and Serket was a Legion soldier. I also had him being around during the collapse of Helgen, and Destana the Dragonborn wasn't there at all. The prisoner who was about to be beheaded was some random Khajiit that I haven't really thought about. And with how many mods there are a few opposing faction situations that I plan on using them down the line. For example, when I get to the Dark Brotherhood, I don't know if I need to do a spoiler tag because this is just like fan fiction, but it hasn't really come up recently, but Runa becomes the listener. Destana does some of the quests for the Dark Brotherhood, but at the same time, Nyreen is going to be working her way through the Destroy the Dark Brotherhood questline, added by mods, and Unfaltered Virtue, which is a Penitus Oculatus story. And at this point in the storyline, the Empire and the Thalmor are not really at odds. Like, they don't like them, but they're still working with them, even though Skyrim won the Civil War. How is this possible, you might ask? Well, mostly it's going to be clever trickery. You kill most of the members of the Dark Brotherhood through these two quest lines. I'll be picking and choosing which are the coolest ways. But also, spoilers for a 13, 14-year-old game, at the end of the Dark Brotherhood quest line, almost everybody gets killed when Astrid betrays everyone. I might be doing something similar with the companions. That's pretty far down the road, though. So I guess that whole wild tangent was to say, even if you don't have Proteus in the game, do things in multiple playthroughs, because the essence of role-playing is doing what your character would do. A lot of games require you to do this, like Morrowind, and some games help you define what you're role-playing as, like Daggerfall or Baldur's Gate 3, but you too can define the rules that immerse you into the world. A lot of YouTubers will do challenge runs, and this is a different kind of rule, a different restriction, but in the same vein. Say, my pure mage doesn't want to join the companions because they're just not interested. That being said, I want to talk about my channel in general, my view on the story that I'm telling, and how I'm telling it. I do want to say, I don't think I've ever seen the specific mixture my channel is. It is a traditional story in its base, and I tend to think of it like episodes of old animated series like the old X-Men or Gargoyles or, I guess, Ninja Turtles, and to some extent anime, of course. There are episodic elements, usually the specific mod or quest line I'm playing at the time. The kind of, everything resets at the end of the episode stuff that modern cartoons are known for, but also with an overarching serial story, stuff like Rick and Morty and things like that are known for. For my Back in Time series, a name that really has very little meaning at this point, it was Destana growing from a new adventurer into an established leader. Somewhat begrudgingly accepting that she's the Dragonborn because she's going to use that power to protect the people that she cares about, becoming the Guildmaster of the Thieves Guild, commander of the Stormcloaks, and a privateer captain. She's passed most of those responsibilities on to other people though, because she's an adventurer, she likes to have fun. She wanted to go back to school, join the Mages Guild but not actually do the quest line and the Bard's College, and become a mother. She adopted Runa and had Damien and Fenrir. She has not reached the power of a fully canon power level Dragonborn fighting gods, and she still somewhat shirks away from responsibility. But she does have some power. She's selfish and flawed, but she tries to do the right thing. And Serket, who is a new character, leaving the duty of the Legion and taking a stand on what he believes in, and actually becoming a strong personality in the story. This serial through line can also be the big quest lines that occupy the middle ground, like the main quest, or the Thieves Guild quest line, or the Civil War. But also how I tell the story is pretty unique. There's the level of the characters in the story, both episodic and serial, but also there's the traditional Let's Play elements I throw in there. I am playing a game, and there are stretches of heavily edited for time and flow gameplay, with me talking. It's pretty hybrid. In that vein, I've tried to build my mod list in a way that presents the best gameplay that's both interesting to watch and fun for me to play. Side note, I play without music, so I can throw in whatever music I want in post without regard for how I cut things. I sample music not only from the Elder Scrolls, but a wide variety of games and a few non-game places. Now, how can this relate to anybody else who maybe wants to do the same thing? Well, I've seen a surprising amount of people who just write fan fiction about their gameplay experiences. And I have no illusion that this is also what I'm doing here, fan fiction. But I mean, Toyotaro started out making Dragon Ball fan fiction, and now he's the lead writer for Dragon Ball Super. And so many movements in fiction start out as homages to older works. In the same vein, there is a handful of people that I can think of that do something similar to what I do. Senturos, Icarus, and JJFXVR come to mind, but I'm sure there are plenty more of them out there. Maybe if you don't want to do what I'm doing, the Elder Scrolls can inspire you to create a great new novel, short story, screenplay, or whatever. Maybe you'll be the next J.K. Rowling. But, without the turf stuff. For anybody who wants to actually get into videos, I'm going to talk about how I do some of the things that I do. Though I've gone through a lot of different stages and levels of technical expertise, and I've used a bunch of different apps, I currently record using OBS, separating my voice during gameplay into a different track so I can cut it out if I sound bad. For editing, I use DaVinci Resolve, the best free and one of the best video editing apps on the market. I often add more commentary after the fact using DaVinci also. General statement, fuck Adobe and everything they make. That includes Acrobat. I use 11 Labs to clone and create voices for my characters and other NPCs. I've got an affiliate code in the description if you want to help me out. And Dragonborn voiceover, a little bit. In Skyrim, I've got a mod list I created over the past 4 years through trial and error. Really started before Wabajack and collections were a thing. I use Vortex, but that's more of a sunk cost fallacy than anything, because MO2 is definitely better. but I've got a mod list of about 1,800 and I really don't want to manually put it all together again, because it also includes a lot of mods that don't currently exist, are no longer available, or don't exist in that form anymore. Like Legacy of the Dragonborn, for instance. Now it only supports AE, but I have the SE version. I do want to say Vortex gets the job done though, even if it is a little bit slow. I heard that the new Nexus mod app is focused on speed and also manually sorting load orders. For the past few years, MO2 has been adding all the functionality that Vortex has had, and now Vortex is finally going to get the functionality that MO2 has. We'll see if it's better. I probably still won't change over. As I did mention, I play on Skyrim 1.5.97 and have no intention of ever upgrading. I upgraded then downgraded, and I pulled some clever trickery to be able to play Bard College expansion. You actually have to unpack some of the BSAs and repack them together with the AE and SE version. 1, to be able to run the creations. 2, for it to function with the SE version of the EXE. Anyway, I won't bore you with the actual details. I can make a guide video if anybody wants that, but I don't think there's really been any demand for that. I've made several city mod list videos, and I intend on continuing with gameplay/combat, NPCs, and maybe more groupings if I can think of more. I've been asked if I could make my mod list into a collection or a Wabbajack, and for the reasons I mentioned earlier, namely that some of the mods you can't get anymore, that wouldn't really be feasible. But I could release it in phases, like parts, chunks, if anybody wants that. Anyway, the mod list is pretty massive. I use MCO, even though I fought it for a very long time, and now BFCO has supplanted it, so I'm fighting that too. I use Nemesis on my main setup, even though Pandora is definitely better, and I did a video on when I installed it, how to install it. I use Open Animation Replacer with lots of custom animations. Here are some highlights: Proteus, Sky Climb, Precision, Ordinator perks, and a lot of Inai mods, with a couple of Simon Rems. It's weird, you read it in your head all the time and you never actually say it out loud. I have a massive loadout of spell add-ons with huge amounts of armor and weapons, a lot of which gets distributed by SPID and Gear Spreader. I use Sex Lab, I will admit it, though I don't have a lot of the more wild feature add-ons, just basic stuff really. I use BHUNP, another sunk cost fallacy, and I have a few NPC mods that overlap with each other. Also, I want to mention my personal rules for armor mods. I'm okay with slightly sexy armor, like bare midriffs and stuff like that. Full-on bikinis, I don't really like that. It's not very practical. One thing I hate, though, is high heels on armor. That is the dumbest, most impractical thing imaginable. And I don't understand why mod makers do that. Really, it breaks verisimilitude and immersion. I'm trying to fight a dragon or something and I broke my ankle. I love ESLs, by the way. I add lots of them, as long as they don't break my game. It's like drinking diet soda. I have a lot of quest mods in standby, since you can mostly add them mid-playthrough. And that's another can of worms. You can add way more mods than you think mid-playthrough, but taking them away is pretty dangerous. Something wild I want to tell you, though, about the term playthrough. I largely don't actually do them how you would expect. Not in the way you would think. I play for what I call segments. I'll tell you why. Or should I tell you what I mean first? Yeah, I'll explain what I mean. So I have a number of distinct characters, and I save their appearance using race menu and keep track of who does what quests at what levels, what skill levels they are, and what equipment they have, and what experience level they are. If I need to drastically change my mod list, say I have something I've been playing with for 20 hours that's completely broken, or I want to simulate the passage of time by having a bunch of town mods added. Whatever, there are a lot of reasons. I play until I find a natural break point or save point with that character, which allow me to stop playing that character and end the segment. This usually comes at the end of a big quest line. If I finish a mod, or if I finish the Thieves Guild quest line, I end it, start a new game, and recreate that character from scratch, using race menu, advanced character creator, add item menu, console commands when needed, and alternate start. and then usually I set the date to what the date was before. These breakpoints also allow me to remove detritus from my load order and add new things. Of course, sometimes I do this in a much smaller way, finding ways around fully recreating a character. When I finished the questlines from Rift Rest, I rolled back to a save before I installed them, ESLified the ends, and removed the questlines. I'm pretty sure I didn't get any new XP levels or anything during that questline. And I kept the locations. I was just not sure if I could ESLify the location and also use the quests, as it would probably point to the wrong forum IDs, but it allowed me to re-get the equipment. As long as I had the video for it, I don't need to keep the world permanently in the same state. I do want to throw in a disclaimer here about using Proteus. I mentioned this in my Proteus Specific video, but I mainly keep all of my characters in their own save games. And I don't swap between characters in the same save. There are several reasons for this. Mainly the save game name changes to whichever character you're controlling, which gets very confusing. All enchantments get stripped off your equipment when you do this. I like to keep everybody in their own lanes and summon them into each other's worlds as each other's companions. God, I wish something like this existed in other games. You can create custom followers in Baldur's Gate 3, which I mentioned earlier, which is pretty cool and similar. Barring this, in a game where you don't have Proteus and do want to do separate quest lines with different characters, just do that. They'll just never meet. I'm currently doing that with Oblivion Remastered. I'm having Carvolo, my main character, do most things, but he's definitely a heavy armor wearing knight type, like a mage knight, an eldritch knight. I'm not saying he's super honorable, but he's definitely not a thief. And although Lucien Lachance approached me after I accidentally killed that guy in the Siege of Kvatch, he's not an assassin either. So my secondary character, Modzie, is going to do the dirty work. So far, that's really just getting Mehrunes' razor. Last thing I got to say is, always keep records. I like to do it in video form, but also in spreadsheets. That's how I keep track of who did what quest when. So I guess that's it. I know this is super weird, but I guess like and subscribe if you liked this. Comment and tell me what you think. And so long, and thanks for watching.